Joining us now on the Emerald Queen Casino Sportsbook Hotline of the Mariners Radio Network, it's Aaron Goldsmith. Aaron, how's it going?
It's great. How are you guys doing?
We are well. I feel like spring is right around the corner. It's kind of gross and rainy today in Seattle, but it's also starting to feel a little bit more like spring, and we're starting to see this club very much take shape. There's really only a couple questions we have. Before I get to the biggest one people ask, which is obviously about Jared Kelnick, I wanted to start with someone who may or may not be on the club. Bump has decided that his guy is Cooper Hummel. So how's he doing? What's he look like? And what are his chances of being with this club to break spring?
We've got the Cooper Hummel fan club started.
Let me
already.
tell you what.
Let's go.
Bump, what was it?
Bump, what? Yeah, is it the eyes? And what do we got going on?
It's I like the way his name looks on paper and on a jersey.
I think it's one L when you think it will be two.
Aaron,
You go ahead.
Someone mentioned him. I forgot who it was. And so then I watched him closely for a game or two, and I like what I saw, and I'm always looking for an underdog, and he fits the bill.
I think that's what you said, Aaron. I think he said, give me an underdog. Give me someone I can root for and feel good about rooting for. And the person we spoke with was like, how about Cooper Hummel?
Yeah.
So tell us a bit about Cooper.
Well, I'm with Bump. I mean, it's a great baseball name. It's a great baseball name, and I think that's at least half the battle. I think Bump's right on target there. I think there will be a place. It sure seems like at least at some point this season for Cooper Hummel, and maybe that is a part of the opening day roster. From what the intrigue around him is that he's this multi-positional type of player, right? I mean, he can play all over the place. He even can catch. The sense I get, obviously the Mariners are really set in their catching position with Cal Raleigh and Tom Murphy, but I would say Cooper Hummel would be a tremendous emergency catcher. That's not going to really be where he finds the majority of his playing time. It would appear right now, but I think there could very well be a bench position for Cooper Hummel. I think obviously the Dylan Moore news creates a trickle down effect in terms of now opening up another spot. Does Sam Haggerty fill Dylan's role for at least for the time being because of the oblique? When Dylan hurt the oblique, he said that he couldn't even swing a bat 50%. Now, that being said, he and the team have said it's a grade 1 strain, which is the least severe, but it's still, we all know how the obliques are. That's going to take a little bit of time, it seems like. I know that the club has remained optimistic, which is terrific, but I think we also need to be realistic about it. If there, heaven forbid, if there's another setback, or if it just takes more time, and add to that the fact that he didn't start his spring training yet. He was about to make his Cactus League debut, and it was injured. So he has to start from ground zero in this, in other words. So I think that there is a trickle-down effect that can make Bump's boy Cooper. I think Coop could have a little bit more of an opportunity now. Bump. I hope you feel good about that.
Yeah, we call him Coop, so I appreciate the love there, Aaron.
I call him Coop.
Oh man, I want to ask about the big dog, man, Robbie Ray. Stacey and I have had many conversations with this guy, and it was like the last thing we remember of Robbie Ray was not the greatest moment, right? So yesterday he goes 4 innings, 9 Ks, and he looks really good. The velocity is up. What have you seen out of him? And then also, what do you know about his personality? I would assume, just being an alpha that he is, he sees the love that Castillo got and the acquisition there, and everyone sees him as the guy. Robbie's like, man, don't forget about me, and that performance yesterday kind of reminded us.
Yeah, and he looked dynamite yesterday. The White Sox did not have their varsity squad traveling to Peoria, but nevertheless, although that might help to explain so many strikeouts in such a short period of time, I don't think that takes away from the quality of stuff that Robbie displayed. There's a noticeable increase in the crispness and the overall quality for Robbie now compared to maybe at any point last year. That's a big statement to make, but the velocity is at a point right now that I don't think we ever saw last year. We're seeing basically sitting 95, popping a 96 to a 97, which we certainly didn't see that high end last season from Robbie. And also, the slider looks even sharper this year. The velocity remains the same on that, which is perfectly fine. It's a power slider, 89 miles an hour. And then the wrinkle that he and also Logan Gilbert have added is the splitter. And the splitter seems to be a really good offering. The thing that I am most encouraged about with Robbie Ray, and that's not to say that I had any concerns about Robbie. I didn't, and I don't. But the thing that I'm I like the most is that Robbie, and we had him on the air yesterday in the telecast, and we asked him about this. He is going back to what made him a Cy Young winner. He is going back to what made him a $100 million free agent pitcher, and that is four-seam fastballs at the top rail of the strike zone, nasty, vicious sliders, and now he's added the split. You know, the two-seamer last year was kind of the storyline for Robbie in the back half of the season, and it was a necessary tool that he implemented and just created because of the Astros in particular. But he used it, of course, to all the other teams he faced also. But that's not Robbie Ray. I mean, I think there's a fine line between a pitcher evolving and also a pitcher knowing what got him there and what makes him an elite-level starting pitcher. And it's this kind of power stuff from the left side from Robbie Ray that makes him an elite-level guy. And now he's doubling down on it, and the stuff looks even better. So that's not to say that the two-seamer will never be thrown again, but I firmly believe after speaking with him that it's fastballs up, sliders down, occasional splitter, and then an even more rare two-seam fastball. And that's what made Robbie Ray a Cy Young winner, and that's the type of guy that the Mariners signed, but we didn't always see last year. That's not to say he didn't have a good season, but we didn't always see that form of Robbie Ray. And credit to him for making it work in another form. But I like the fact that his plan going into the season is to get back to the guy that he was prior.
You know, Aaron Bump is right in that a lot of the conversations we've had when it comes to pitching has either been about the potential to take yet another step forward for your two youngest guys with Logan and George Kirby, but also with Robbie Ray, right? Trying to change that narrative. They're just more interesting conversations. So when your job is talking about conversations, like that's it. You don't usually talk about things that you know are going to be just fine. In this case, that's been Luis Castillo. However, how has Luis Castillo looked? Has he looked just fine?
He looked just fine. I mean, this is Scott is getting to know the spring training version of Luis Castillo. And what we have learned, speaking with Scott and those around the ball club, is Luis is the type of guy that he doesn't do a lot of heavy stuff during the winter. He really starts to ramp it up in spring training. And Scott has spoken about how he's been impressed with the overall quality of the stuff and even the velocity for Luis as he starts to ramp it up. I mean, every pitcher is different in terms of how they approach spring, how they want to get ready for opening day. We see some guys like Dylan Cease, who started yesterday for the White Sox, who was the runner-up for the Cy Young last season. I mean, Cease was in there, and he was pumping 96, 97 miles an hour with a nasty slider. That's who Dylan Cease is. His velo is already there. And there are other guys who kind of start to build the velocity outing by outing, and it seems like that's what Luis is doing. And we all know that I think we're going to follow what Luis wants to do when it comes to his game. And I mean, last year he sat 97 miles an hour. So I'm not at all concerned that if he's not popping 97s yet. He is a type of guy that when the bell rings, he's at his best. And I think, I was talking about this a little bit yesterday. I remember back when Felix was pitching and was even in his heyday, I mean, he was not a good Cactus League pitcher. And I totally understand why. There's no juice. There's no adrenaline. The lights are dim, meaning not literally, but there's nothing at stake. I mean, he's King Felix. He's the opening day starter, and he's just out there getting his arm warmed up and ready to go and getting in pitching shape for opening day. And I think this exact same is true for Luis Castillo. He's looked perfectly fine. There's no concerns there. And come opening day, he will be pumping 97 and be looking sharp as always, I'd have to imagine.
Aaron, I got to ask you about the World Baseball Classic, man. My kids, they love them some Mariners, right? But if the Mariners aren't playing, they're typically not watching. My daughter, she's 9 years old. She's probably the most athletic one of my kids, but doesn't want nothing to do with it. She goes, Dad, can you put on the USA-Cuba game? And I look at her like, really? I go, of course I can, babe. Let's put the game on right now. And I automatically thought, I go, this is what the youth needs. Like my kids love seeing all the passion and the craziness going on in the crowd with all the performances that you've seen, like Trey Turner or whatnot, anyone else having good games over there. Do you think I'm right? Am I right? Am I right in thinking that the WBC can push the youth towards baseball just by the environment that it presents?
Well, I mean, it has been spectacular. There's no question. Unfortunately, as we know, it's a rare occurrence in the grand scheme of the baseball calendar, right? It's not an annual thing. But I do understand what you're saying, and I've thought similar things when I watch. To me, what has stood out, yes, the crowds have been incredible, right? And you are seeing the vibe of the crowd that you do see in, like, winter ball in Venezuela, right? Because it's Team Venezuela playing, for example. But to me, I've loved when a dude hits a huge homer, like Turner's Grand Slam you reference, and then the dugout spilling out onto the field, right? Like we see that in college baseball or college softball. There's a real collegiate vibe to it in that regard. And in the last couple of years, as we all know, there has been kind of more of an acceptance of, let's call it post-dinger celebrations, right? And those are becoming more embraced, not by everyone, but I would say by the majority now, both the players and fans. And the WBC is taking that to an all-time new high. And so I don't think that's going to necessarily carry over one-for-one to the regular season for Major League Baseball. But I think we'd all love it if there was some element of that carried over because, yes, there is this incredible energy and this collegiate sense to it that everyone gravitates to. It's been awesome. That's been my favorite part, or watching the home run celebrations. It's been really cool.
Hey, Aaron, I wanted to talk about Jared Kelnick. No surprise, I'm sure, a conversation you guys have been having a lot. And baseball, quote, experts like Shannon have told me not to read too much into spring.
The mainstream media.
The lamestream Mariners media, Aaron, has told me not to read too much into spring. And yet, here I am looking at Jared Kelnick slashing 421, 458, 95. I don't know what to do with that. I don't know what to do with this information, Aaron. Everything in me is telling me to be excited about this guy, except for logic. I mean, how should Mariners fans be feeling about him right now?
I think you can be both, right? You can be really excited by what you see, but you can also be realistic about it. I mean, for example, and I might be in a minority here, in spring training for years now, I don't write down a single statistic. I have no idea how many home runs any of the guys have hit, right? Like, I don't know how many innings guys have thrown or what their ERAs are. I have no idea what the Mariners' record is in Cactus League. Because in the grand scheme of things, that doesn't matter. I mean, the quality of competition is there's so much ebb and flow to it. Look at any of these lineups, any of the guys pitching in relief at any point. I mean, it could be a guy who was in Biloxi last year, right? So I totally agree with Shannon and all these other experts that you guys have on your program. The numbers. The numbers generally aren't the most accurate thing. Like, for example, I know that the first four home runs that Jared hit were basically grooved fastballs right down the middle. Okay. Now, does that mean that it's a bad thing that Jared Kelnick hit those on average, I don't know, like 450 feet and cleared the batter's eye with one of them? No, that's exactly what he should do if he's at his absolute best, whether it's in Arizona or in Seattle. And we've seen Jared and any other player foul those balls straight back, right? Or swing and miss. So he is doing the best case scenario for those types of pitches, which he should be given credit for. This time of year in particular, and it carries over into the regular season, but this time of year, it's all about the process for these players. Are they swinging at good pitches? And when they do swing at good pitches, are they making quality contact? That's what matters. Because we have seen Mariners who have made opening day rosters and have played wire to wire in years past have amazing springs and have not had good regular seasons. And we all know who those guys are. So, to me, I think you can be incredibly encouraged by what you're seeing from Jared Kelnick. He's doing probably the best possible thing that he could do. Like, you can't really swing the bat much better than what he's doing right now. But you can also be realistic and know that, well, that doesn't mean he's going to hit 400 in the regular season, or even 300 maybe. But his process seems to be absolutely spot on, which is what the Mariners want. It's what Scott wants, it's what Jerry wants, it's what Justin wants. Jared DeHart, his hitting coach. This is what he's worked all winter on, is the process, and it's paying dividends. And for a guy like Jared, it's different for Jared than it is for a guy like A.J. Pollock, Mariners' new outfielder, who's a grizzled veteran. Like, if A.J. Pollock hits 200 for the spring, he doesn't care at all. I mean, he's on the team. He's an accomplished big leaguer. He has won awards. He's been a part of great teams. He doesn't need to prove anything to himself or to the Mariners. His confidence is fine. But is Jared Kelnick's confidence fine?
Right.
Does he have something to prove? I think he needs something to prove. And yeah, he could use a confidence boost. Even a guy like him who's born with natural confidence, he's been through a lot, as we know. So I think him posting these numbers, even though it doesn't necessarily guarantee you anything, it's really good for Jared. I'm really happy for him. He clearly put in work during the offseason. He looks better. He looks confident. He looks comfortable, and we're seeing the process pay off results. So he's in a great spot right now, and we all hope it continues.
All right, great stuff from Aaron Goldsmith of the Mariners Radio Network. No surprise there. Aaron, thank you so much for taking the time. We appreciate it.
See you, Aaron.
Hey, guys. Great being with you. Hey, bear down.